Welcome back to the AGH Sports Medicine Back in the Game with Pittsburgh Sports Report. I'm your host, Ellis Cannon, joined again by Dr. Edward Snell. Of course, he is a head team physician of the Pittsburgh Pirates, among others, and that includes being the immediate past president of the MLB Team Physicians Association. All right, doctor, let's get to something today that is prevalent out there as well, and that, of course, would be exercise-induced asthma. I've had this with one of my sons, and I know that it can be quite scary indeed. Talk a little bit about generally how this develops.
Well, we think that it develops later in life, so we don't see it normally in kids under the age of 2 years old. It's a different malady then, but as kids get older, they develop a little bit of inflammation that can be chronic in the airways. It causes a decrease in the airflow, and it usually manifests in kids as a cough with exercise. It can manifest as an audible wheeze. It's definitely a shortness of breath. They may have decreased performance, and that's all you see. So these are things that you really got to be concerned about, because you get this excess mucus production, and they'll be like coughing. Sometimes they'll just have a sore throat in the morning because the mucus drains into your throat, or sometimes they'll get stomach pain because they get this mucus that drains into your stomach. So it's important to kind of realize some of the subtle findings or the subtle complaints that your child may experience.
Yeah, I'm glad you point out child. I think that a lot of the children had this popularized, if you will, when Jerome Bettis years ago was consistently monitoring this as a obviously NFL star. Talk a little bit about what happens with exercise. Does it exacerbate or make those types of conditions worse, and how so?
Well, yeah, exercise, and Jerome Bettis is a perfect example. Wonderful man who was great to take care of. We helped him with his asthma. One of my colleagues here at Allegheny General was instrumental in helping him control it during his playing career. He had exercise-induced asthma like the children will do. What happens is you have exercise, you start to get a cough, you start to get constriction, you start to get wheezing, you get short of breath. So the exercise can actually induce the inflammation and cause a lot of the symptoms that you see with asthma. And it's something that you have to be aware of, because it can be dangerous. If you get a severe attack, you can get severe constriction, and then, I mean, obviously the worst thing that can happen is death, but we hope that doesn't happen, because we hope we recognize it sooner.
Talk about the factors that weather could present, particularly humidity, temperature, things of that nature.
Yeah, cold and humidity tend to exacerbate asthmatic symptoms, including if somebody does mouth breathing, you can get pollutants that exacerbate it. You can get allergens that exacerbate it. In fact, 50% of asthmatics have a cross problem with allergies, and allergies can make the symptoms a lot worse.
This may just be a layperson's way of thinking of it, but I suspect that taking breaks can be of help. In other words, the continuous activity is the activity that can lend itself to more of these symptoms arising.
Well, the funny thing is that it's important to exercise, because it's important to get your pulmonary system kind of working, your lungs working, and that actually helps the symptoms in the long run. But you're right. If you're exercise, make sure you take adequate breaks. If you're in the sun or you're in the cold, make sure you get adequate relief from those venues to make sure that you don't have an exacerbation of your symptoms too bad.
You talked about breathing through the mouth. I know that before we began our conversation, I told you I had not really heard about that. I suspect you could say, well, play without breathing through your mouth. But, boy, I never really had heard that as being something to be a contributing factor.
It's difficult because when you breathe through your mouth, you don't get the air warmed as much, and it doesn't get moisturized as much, and it can really bring in the allergens or the cold or warm air a little bit more, so it can really make the symptoms a lot worse.
Besides trying to control the symptoms non-medically, there's medication out there that obviously can control these types of symptoms.
Yeah, there's inhaled medications that can really control these: inhaled steroids, inhaled mast cell stabilizers, inhaled beta agonists. Beta agonists are things that make the bronchioles open and give you a little bit more breathing room. These can all help this. And it's important in exercise-induced asthma, unlike other forms of asthma, you have to take the inhaler about 20 minutes before exercise. And if the exercise is lasting for more than 4 hours, some of the inhaled bronchodilators only last for about 4 hours, so you have to retake those again 4 hours into the exercise to make sure you get adequate coverage. You also have to make sure at the end of your exercise there's a period in the recovery period where the asthma can get a little bit worse, so you have to make sure that you're covered then as well.
So prevention, obviously, another key to how to treat this, and I suspect that this would go across the gamut: basketball, baseball, football, any of these continuous activity sports.
Yeah, we want it can happen in any sport, and the important thing, like any other chronic disease process, is to make sure you encourage the kid to continue to be active, because that's an important part of treatment. So controlling their symptoms during their activity to make them know that these controlling the symptoms, they can continue to be one, active, two, a very good athletic person. They can still perform at very high levels, as Jerome Bettis did.
Dr. Snell, I know we talk about controlling, and we've kicked around a couple different ideas. It includes, as you point out, using the inhalator beforehand and so forth. But talk about something else that just stands to reason, and that is if you've got an upper respiratory disease, or for that matter, condition, even a cold or a flu, you've got to be particularly attentive to it.
Yeah, if you have any kind of infection that's ongoing, it makes the asthma a lot worse. Just like the allergies. If you control the allergies, you make sure that the virus or bacteria that you have is controlled, the symptoms with asthma can be controlled a lot more effectively.
Talk a little bit finally about what happens when these symptoms arise, whether it's calling a friend, calling a colleague, calling a family member, all the way through 911 and calling a doctor.
Yeah, as I said earlier, asthma can be dangerous. When you have severe constriction, make sure that if that person is really not responding to the immediate intervention, such as inhaled beta agonist or getting them out of the heat or the cold, make sure that you respond by getting 911 involved. Or if there's a close relative that understands their disease, get them involved. If there's a medical personnel around, make sure they get involved so the person does not get into a situation, or the child gets into a situation that can be dangerous.
Doctor, thanks for the insight and the time. All right, there you have it, our AGH Sports Medicine Back in the Game with Pittsburgh Sports Report with Dr. Edward Snell. I'm Ellis Cannon. You're watching PittsburghSportsReport.com.